Ooh. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And what a match that I just watched here in New Zealand. 3 o'clock in the morning. So obviously, you know, Springbok supporter quite happy at the outcome. But let me tell you, this was nothing short of an amazing match, and it could have gone either way. Both teams played very well. There were stages in this game that any of these two teams could have won it in the end. But the Springboks just at the end, that bench and that impact being just too much for the All Blacks. Now, let's have a quick look at the game. And there's just a few things I want to say before we look at the highlights. The first thing is I just want to talk about a few standout players. Now, let's start with the All Blacks. I felt that, I've told you guys over and over, I'm not too much of a fan of Tupou Vaa'i. Has he changed my mind tonight? The guy's coming into his own. He was over some balls, did some jackling in there. He was really good at the lineouts tonight. Just overall brilliant performance by Tupou Vaa'i, and he's really stepped up in this game, and I was super impressed by his performance. He did very well. Cody Taylor had a pretty solid game. I thought from a backline, Jordie Barrett, of course, just his reading of the game, got a few great kicks in there. Played a great game. Obviously, the intercept in the game was very well read, and he knew that was obviously a planned thing. And then, of course, Caleb Clarke. We can't look past Caleb Clarke. I mean, another guy that really impressed me. I wouldn't have put him into my starting lineup, and in the end, him making a huge difference in those tries that he scored. Just at the right place at the right time, really breaks tackles, was great under the high ball. Then looking at the Springboks, I mean, Dele Lendi was so great over every single loose ball. He was just phenomenal. You had, a guy like Fassi was on fullback, great at times, very dangerous on line breaks, but did make some mistakes, but generally had a good game. And then, of course, I'm talking first off, especially Mongazulu did some fabulous stuff again, made a few mistakes, but man, this guy is really something special, and I think the world can see it. 23 years old, and already some of the stuff that he does, he's knowing where to be for the kicks on defense, to sit deep. He's always there to field the kicks back, and brilliant kicks in space, looking for space. And even when Pollard can come on, they don't switch into Pollard. It's almost like he's now starting to own that jersey so quickly in the space of what he's only got like 6 or 7 caps. Initially, it didn't have the biggest impact that you think it would have, but then later on, that bomb squad was just phenomenally when they started getting tighter, playing towards their set piece strength, being patient in those rolling mauls, and then starting to force the errors on New Zealand. And I think that's really where the game was won in the end. But let's start by looking at the highlights. In Ellis Park, back to the brim, right up to the nosebleeds. You can see people, and what an occasion. Let's have a look.
Most respected foe. This is round 3 of the Castle Lager Rugby Championship, and another 80 minutes of drama awaits.
Now, let me just say, I mean, the thing there that is so phenomenal about that, Springbok Rugby is really lifting the game of rugby, especially in South Africa. It means so much, but for the whole world, it is a big thing. And then, of course, the All Blacks, they have always been that team all these years, making rugby what it's been.
He's dropped 2 and 2. Cody Taylor, Savia the target. The All Blacks getting some momentum from their maul, over and down, Cody Taylor.
Now, you just saw there the first try, Cody Taylor going through for the try early, and immediately it felt like from the start the All Blacks was just in it. Surprisingly, shockingly from the Springboks right from the start in the lineouts, it didn't look a little bit disjointed, and there was literally no defense to this rolling maul. And I thought, really, the All Blacks have come to play, but I also felt that they are being good at the things that I was very surprised at, that rolling maul and the poor defense from the Springboks. And I was like, okay, yeah, we got a game on our hands. Now, guys, it was a strange first 15 minutes. Just because in those first 15 minutes, there were so many referee calls that was just really strange. And what really frustrates me these days, I know they want to speed up the game of rugby, so they don't show as many replays. But sometimes I feel very deliberately not wanting to point out the refs' mistakes or whatever. And they do a replay once and from the worst angle, and then you can't really see if the ref got the call right or wrong. But I mean, just in that first while, obviously the try will be debatable. But I mean, they've got the TMOs and they did review it. But I mean, rightfully so, some will feel we'll look at the try now. It's next on the highlights that it rolled out of the arm. But it wasn't just that. I mean, the other one was the crazy one when TJ Perenara just wanted to speak to the ref. The next thing he gives a penalty. I mean, the ref was a bit crazy at the start. It was almost like he wanted to push down his authority on everything. And then just the short time they gave Mangazulu for that kick, it didn't feel like the full time that he needed for that kick. And I just felt in those first few scrums between the two teams, on the other side where the referee was standing, the scrum collapsed more than once that he didn't see at all, which would have been a penalty or two for the Springboks. So just overall, just a lot of poor refereeing towards the start of this game. But let's then move on.
Springboks packing in around him, and Banambi with the breakaway. He had a lot to do there.
Now, to be honest, me now looking at it again, many referees would have called that he didn't have control over the ball. It kind of rolled a bit out of his arm. It was still on his arm, but there was separation. But I mean, that's a game of rugby. They could have called it back. They didn't. But I'm sure it'll be a highly debated thing for All Black supporters. The game's the game. There's always, every single game, guys, there's going to be some calls. The Springboks have had some. And, it's also, you got to think of the butterfly effect. If that happened, other things could have happened. The game played out the way it played out. You can't go say this or that would have changed the game. Every single thing that happens in the game results in another thing. But I've got to say, just Bongi Bonami's run there was really strong from there. To score, because the rolling maul didn't seem like it was going to go the full distance. So him breaking away and scoring that try, it was great. I mean, at this point, 28 minutes in, the All Blacks ahead 7-5, and it was a back and forth at the start. I mean, the All Blacks came so hard in that first while. It was also a very expansive game from both teams. And because it was so expansive, I felt there was loads of handling errors from both teams. Hopefully in the second test, the handling errors will get less. It was very loose, always opting both teams in the tackles to try and get the offloads away. And that's great. It keeps the ball alive. It's beautiful rugby to watch, the expansive rugby, but also a lot of knock-ons and mistakes. So that I felt was a bit of it really made the game stop and start quite a bit. What I really picked up in that first while that the Springboks did really well is Mangazulu kicked very deep into the All Blacks half. So what they did is put huge pressure and try and push them back into their own half. And it came off quite often because the Springboks defense was quite pressing, and they'll take the ball and be under a huge pressure and be in their own half. And the exits from Damian McKenzie wasn't always the best, sometimes good, but sometimes also not that great. And it did give the Springboks some territorial advantage. But I have to say, possession-wise, it was just like the All Blacks was holding on to the ball much more, and the Springboks had to defend for very long. Now, at the start, I thought the defense was great from the Springboks. You saw the All Blacks go laterally over the field and not being able to do anything. But then eventually, they started figuring out that midfield defense. And Geordie, very intelligent player, Geordie Barrett, he started figuring how to break that line a bit more and created some opportunities. Now, I have to say that the Springboks was a bit shocking in the lineouts. I felt their set piece was good, their scrums was good. Wasn't really given time to get penalties, and like I say, I did see some collapses in those scrums that should have maybe gone the Springboks' way once or twice. But overall in the lineouts, the All Blacks was better than the Springboks in the lineouts. The Springboks wasn't always finding each other. So
in South Africa's defensive line. Perenara wants to come back to his left. Sasha Feinberg and Gomezulu certainly got the...
Now let me just say again, guys, I have to really just rave about this boy. He's really a boy. He's 23 years old. He pretty much came out of school 2-3 years down the line, and he's now the number one pick in the Springbok team at that very important 10 jersey, and just the kicks that this guy puts through. I mean, that was a huge kick, and he kicked it through pretty comfortably. He's just an all-out player, you know. He still makes some mistakes, but Rusty's giving him that opportunity. And I think the world can see this is a player, one of the greats in, if he doesn't get serious injuries and out for a long time, he's going to be one of the greats of the future.
Jasper Visser as he came around the corner. So turnover ball here for the All Blacks. It could be on for them. Bowden Barrett for Jordan and Caleb Clark. Clark is in.
Now this was great from D-Mac. He saw that he had like a dummy run, and what that did is the Springboks usually shoot up quickly, and this time he exposed that because he had this dummy run, broke that defense, and then suddenly the Springboks were all on the back foot chasing, and no longer basically pressing but chasing.
The All Blacks, it was an unforced error from the Springboks as Dixon tried to pop the ball up for Visser. Two All Blacks to get him on the ground, trying to create a mismatch. There's a knock on there.
Another knock on, and half-time's called. Look, that's not all that happened. There was some good expansive play. Both teams looked dangerous. Great try in the end. And I felt that when the All Blacks are moving the ball and they're able to break that press defense and get past it, that did create opportunities for them to score tries, because they are just so dangerous. As soon as they break the line, they're very good at drawing players in and getting the balls away. And then you got Caleb Clark with huge pace. He's got the pace there, and he's got the size. So worked out well for them in that first half to score that first try, and it just gave them that confidence going into halftime that we right in this game. It's not at any moment that they felt this is not that we in the game. I mean, they had all the pressure of Ellis Park playing there, or Emirates Park, and Johannesburg, and the altitude and all of that, and I think they really absorbed the pressure so well, and I was super impressed by their first half and the way they played. For the Springboks, on the other hand, you felt that they were playing well, but a few things just felt a little bit disjointed. I don't know, they weren't finding each other properly in the lineouts. They couldn't really get the impact from the set piece, from the scrums. The ref didn't really allow the scrums to have much of an effect on the game. And then you had guys like, I felt Kobus Reinach was a bit slow to get the ball out and move the ball. A lot of handling errors all round from everyone, but still not a bad performance. It was just not great. It could have been a lot better if they just, I felt sometimes it was very expansive, and it was beautiful to see from both teams, you know, the All Blacks and the Springboks. But you almost feel sometimes both of the teams a bit too eager to be too expansive, and just some of those balls, you know, just the going into the tackle and just throwing out the ball, and then sometimes someone knocking it on, where if they just hold on to one or two of those balls and take the tackles, the phases, and build just a few phases, then play it expansively. It's just, I feel both teams actually at the moment, with the Springboks also playing more expansive, they need to get that mix right between, you know, being too expansive and then obviously playing it a little bit more phased and tighter. They got to get that mix right, because this first half, it felt to me like at times just too expansive, and that's why it felt a little bit loose, you know, and that actually complemented the All Blacks more than it did the Springboks, to be honest, because the Springboks are picking up that game. And what I got to say I love is the Springboks did not for 1 minute go out in this game and say, you know, we're not going to play that. They played both, expansive and tight. And you could see right through the game, they weren't just going for the 3 points every time. They were going for the tries and trying to play expansive also. So that I got to give to them. But overall, really good first half. Now let's have a look at the second half.
It's a Beth. Down for Reinach, Feinberg and Gomezulu, and the interception is from Jordy Barrett, chased down by Kirkley Arendse. But Barrett has...
Now, like they say there, that is exactly the point, that the Springboks just kept playing the same back-like play. It's almost like a little drifting move with the small little pass, just basically an offload pass with a drifting move. Now, because there's that drifting happening, that Barrett could read Delalindi and he could read the play very well, and obviously he saw they picked this up halftime and said, watch that, try and read that play. And Jordie Barrett really has got a very good rugby brain and an intelligent player, and he read it perfectly. And this really was a tipping point in the game for me in the momentum, because I don't know, even though the first half was back and forth and the All Blacks had a lot of the possession, you still felt the momentum was a lot with the Springboks, especially towards the end of the first half. But that second half, when this try was scored, it was almost like the game shifted a little bit. It felt like a little bit of like a momentum shift, and the Springboks had brought up the bomb squad early, so the entire bomb squad was already on, and you felt that the bomb squad wasn't really having the impact that it usually has. Now, eventually, later in the game, it did pay off for them, that bomb squad.
Wonderful support there from Gerard Steenekamp, just his 5th test cap.
Now there, look how good Vai was there. That's exactly what I was talking. Tupo Vai right over those balls, knowing as soon as Itzabev went down that he had opportunity, he can first go in for the jackal, and obviously them sealing off, and very intelligent play there from Vai. And I felt in this game he really stepped up and matured a lot, almost started looking now more like that kind of like experienced play on the field. And it's good to see these players step up to the big on the big stage, and I really felt in this game Vai really stepped up, and this was a big top tipping point now.
And now adds another 3, so back into an 8-point lead.
From 15.
Over the top from Cody Taylor, McKenzie. There's a 2-on-1 here for Bowden Barrett, and Clark will go in unopposed.
That one was an overthrow and so well read by the All Blacks, and because of the overthrow and the Springboks press defense, they were able to break that line. And then it's a matter of pulling them in and then just getting it out to the Speedster, and Caleb Clark goes through for a try again. And I mean, the guy now scored 2 tries, and suddenly you're like, okay, this is now serious. I was like, okay, this is probably going to be it for the Springboks, because to pull it back from here would mean they really have to change the way they play, their momentum. Everything had to shift for them to win this game, because nothing was going their way. They weren't really looking good in this period, this passage of the game, say about 50 to 60, 65 minutes. And you had an issue in between where actually Kurtley Arendse got an injury, and because they put up the whole bomb squad, they had to reshift and bring on Pollard. Grant Williams had also come on. And because Pollard came on, I thought that was so interesting. I thought Mangazulu, because of he being the young guy and whatever, would shift around. But I felt Mangazulu was just playing so great that I think Rassie feels the same as what most supporters do. Mangazulu is so good at the moment at that 10 position. And yes, he does take risk, but a lot pays off for this guy. And he's becoming a really, really good 10. And deciding to keep him and not put Pollard at 10, and then Pollard obviously have played centre, shifting him into centre. And then, of course, Jesse Kriel has played wing. So I heard the commentators, it's something that I don't agree with at all, is the commentators saying, oh, it's backfiring, the bomb squad is backfiring on them because now Kriel's got to be on the wing. Kriel played wing full games for the Springboks. Andre Pollard's played centre, so it doesn't really make sense. The bomb squad didn't backfire because they had to shift some players around. If you look at the end of the game for the All Blacks, after getting the card, they had to also shift guys around, and I think at the end you had Rico Ioane playing wing. So what then? Is that also a backfire? So that just doesn't make sense to me. I think this whole narrative that, oh, one day the 6-2 is going to backfire on you. When you've got this type of depth and, utility players, which the Springboks have, it can't easily backfire on them. It would really take a lot before it would backfire. A lot of injuries in the game before it will really backfire on them. But nevertheless, taking nothing away from this great drive from the All Blacks, and at this point you were like, wow, this is now big.
Sideways. More moving sideways, so stop call. But Malcolm Marx still in control as the Springboks go forward. Still moving. And still moving forward. Suddenly the crowd in Johannesburg finds their voice.
A little bit on those highlights there, you'll see that It didn't show it, but at this point, I mean, I have to say the All Blacks just started giving away so many penalties. I don't have the stats here, but the penalty count must have been really high for the All Blacks. The All Blacks was not rolling away, and it's one of the big things. I mean, I remember the games where the Springboks played Ireland. It's some of these refs, especially Northern Hemisphere refs, are very, very strict on that rolling away thing. And you could see a lot of the times it seemed like the All Blacks was trying to slow the ball down by not rolling away and kind of trying to slow those rucks and mauls down, especially the rucks, trying to just roll away a bit slower. And they did get it right at times, but conceding a lot of penalties because of that. And it's something they will have to definitely look at. But that really cost them the game, because every time they think they're back into it, then what happens is they concede a penalty again. And then, of course, this, where the Springboks, I felt, there you could see the 66 minute going to what they should have gone to, I think, a bit early in the second half. The expansive game's great. It's great. You can run it. They can go for tries if they want to, and they don't want to take the 3 points. Sometimes I felt they should have taken the 3 points. They didn't. They wanted the tries. That's all good. But at some point, they have to play bit more with their forwards and play to their strengths, and they started doing that well from about the 65th, 66th minute, when they started having the patience, taking the ball in, waiting for that rolling ball to absorb the pressure from the defense from the All Blacks, because they really did defend the rolling ball very well. They actually pushed the Springboks back a bit, but then the Springboks finding that momentum and going forward. But the big problem here is they could see that rolling ball in this instance is going to go for the try. Ofa Tungafasi basically collapsing it, and immediately, obviously, a card. And this was a big tipping point here to swing this momentum back towards the Springboks.
Hands in the pocket. 18 changing ball.
Colby filling in at scrum half away for Itzabeth. They're close to the line. No! Over they go!
Say no more, Kwagga Smith. I mean, Kwagga Smith He's such an impact player. I mean, he's barely on just for a while. Saw one open ball, he pounced on it. No one was there. Turned the ball around, Jackal earlier. Then he scores this great try. And I mean, you underestimate the work rate that this guy puts in. I mean, he's really such a great player for the Springboks to still have. It feels like Kwagga Smith's just played forever. And great to always see him on the field, because he's just so solid over the ball. He drives so hard, works so hard, and he's not the tallest of guys, but he's got so much leg power to drive through tackles. And I mean, this was a turning point when Kwagga scored this try. It was a big turning point for me. And you started seeing now more and more the Springboks start basically forcing errors on the All Blacks by just basically kicking it off and then being really, really tight on the defense and pressing the defense. So what I found, what was interesting, is they allowed Mangazulu, even though it's the fly off, it looked quite often like he was also playing that fullback role, who was back fielding a lot of the kicks, and he wasn't scared to kick it deep into the All Blacks 22, and I thought a lot of those would be marked, but because the Springboks have such quick wingers, quite often the All Blacks was put under pressure by the Springboks, and they made mistakes, and they get tackled in their own 22, and the Springboks just press with that defense.
Offside.
Another penalty advantage.
Offside advantage.
Next carry just a metre short, and Williams!
Now, I mean, that was 75 minutes into the game, and you heard there, penalty after penalty were being conceded by the All Blacks. They had one man down, and just a guy like Grant Williams again from that bench. I really felt Kobus Reinach now, Faf de Klerk used to slow the ball down a lot. Reinach now starting to feel to me like he's a bit too slow to get the ball out. What Grant Williams does so well is he's distributing of the ball and just being very quick getting the ball out, and he's sniping, looking for space. Yeah, again, sniping and seeing that, kind of fooling the whole backline, running like it looked like he was going to pass it, and then just sidestep back in and sniping for that line, and scores a great try. And now I'm like, shouldn't Grant Williams be that combination with Mangazulu? Because they're playing Kobus Reinach with Mangazulu, and then, well, it didn't work out this game, but they try and play Pollard with Grant Williams as the scrum half. I'm starting to think to myself, a really, really dangerous pair would be a Grant Williams starting with Mongazulu. And then if you want, you can put a Cobus Reinach or Pollard for a second half. But the way it's going these days, I don't know if Mongazulu is ever going to be taken off in the games. It might be that Pollard needs to move to center or something else, because you want to keep Pollard on the field. I actually think he'll be a good fullback because Pollard can kick really well, and maybe he should start playing fullback, because as much as Fuss is so dangerous on the runs and he is a talented player, his defense sometimes you got to ask questions, and of course also, just generally his kicking game is not great. I mean, I remember one where he had a break. He just had to pass in to score for the Springboks to score the try, and then he gives a kick out the sideline, and you're like, the try was there just to be scored. So it's just sometimes he seems a bit over eager. But Fussy could be really good for the future, but I just don't know at the moment if he's quite there yet. But nevertheless, I'm digressing. 75 minutes into the game, Springboks ahead, 29-27, and Mongazulu still the kick, now pushing it out by 4 points.
But he is undeterred. We promise you an epic, and these two teams have delivered. It was all New Zealand for so much of the opening quarter of the game.
For me, obviously, guys, I was elated, guys. It was a really, really great game, and I felt the Springboks right to the end. I thought they were going to just run down the clock 3 minutes before the end, but Mongazulu, I think, still kicked it twice, quite deep into the 22. And at the time, I was like, you're just throwing the ball away. But he was actually very clever in that sense, because sometimes you just can't run it down for that long, and you just maybe have a knock on somewhere or whatever. The forwards, sometimes that happens. If they try and run it down for 2-3 minutes, someone knocks it on or gives away a penalty, and that gives the All Blacks a chance. What he did well is he kicked it so deep into the 22, and then the fence was up so quickly that it really put the All Blacks under pressure for that last 2-3 minutes, and they couldn't do anything because they were playing really deep in their own half, so they had no opportunities. They tried to break the tackles at times, tried to run it in the back line, but a really good defense at the end by the Springboks. And listen, guys, it is a well-deserved win this for the Springboks, so I really hope as All Black supporters you can show that respect, and everyone's not just going to point back to the one try and say, oh, that's it. If the try wasn't scored, we would have won. If the try wasn't scored, a lot of other things wouldn't have happened. You can't reason with rugby like that. At the end of the day, there was definitely a lot of stuff by the ref not seen in the scrums everywhere that wasn't, that could have changed the whole game in just poor refereeing here and there, but the referees can't get it all right. The ref was better towards the second half. For me, the first half, some of those things that he did, I'd say that first 15 minutes, he was just trying to, kind of push down his authority on the game, and it was kind of forcing it. Not very unfair to say to TJ Perenara, he can't talk to the ref. It was a bit bizarre, but the fact is, the overall game, when you look at it, and you look at the Springboks being down, by 10 points and pulling it back like this and winning the game, it is well deserved. And the fact is, you've got to put respect on Rassie's name. And why I say that is the way he's built depth in this team, and the way that bomb squad comes on, and even if it doesn't have the impact straight away, you can just see the difference in the bench, the quality of the players there versus what comes off the bench for the All Blacks. The All Blacks really need to work at depth, and this is not something that Razor can do overnight. And I don't say Razor's not going to get there. You already start seeing players step up, like Vai was really good in this game. Sam Derry's coming through. There is young guys. There's guys coming through, definitely, but to get this type of depth is going to take some time. But the Springboks really, they can be criticized for the 6-2 split as much as they want. It is a really, really good thing to win games with, because it just gives them all that extra fresh legs come on with a lot of power for a full second half to come play again. And those players, when they come off the bench, it also takes them a little while to really get into their groove. So that's what we saw here in this game. they were a bit poor for their first 15 minutes, but then really got into their groove, that bench, and guys like Kwagga Smith, even a Grant Williams, I mean, Al Riglo, a lot of guys really came from the bench and brought that impact that I think was the determining factor in this game. You know, the All Blacks could have won this game if they were better in their you know, just overall discipline. Definitely around those rolling away and things. They have to work at that because they were giving away a lot of penalties. But a few tweaks, and this All Black team can win a game against the Springboks. It's just, what will the Springboks do next? What's their next steps for the second test? Because this test is now going to be huge pressure on Razor. He would want to win it to have any type of shot still for the Rugby Championship, but he also want to win it because if he doesn't win this, his track record with the All Blacks is then going to look like one of the poorest out of all previous coaches. It's such a high standard for All Black rugby. And it's not like this All Black team can walk away after this test match and say, oh, they have to be disappointed in themselves. They played phenomenally well. It's just that the Springboks just had that bit more in the end. And for the Springboks on the other side, you know, a lot to still look at. They had some poor things happen in between. There's definitely some things they have to look at with their lineouts. There were some issues there. There was points in the game where they kind of lost momentum, and I just felt they were looking a bit off for a home game like this. I didn't feel the intensity right through. Just after second half and the All Blacks scoring, there was definitely a time where they just seemed a little bit out of the game. So a lot for both teams that they can look at and work at for this next game. But I totally love this game. It was a great one for many reasons, and you know, it was expansive. It had the running rugby in it. It had the forward like pack rugby in it. Great lineouts. Just overall a really good game. Maybe just too many handling errors and too many penalties given away. Handling errors from both teams and even penalties. That could be better from both sides. But overall, the expansiveness was beautiful to see. Running rugby. Great game from Sasha Feinberg Mangazulu. Just love what the guy is doing right now with the Springboks, and kind of how his type of game, it's almost like the Springboks are starting to build this expansive type game around him. Their biggest challenge is if he gets an injury, the fact that they're not bringing Pollard up on that second half as much anymore as the fly-off. If he gets an injury, it might put them under some pressure, but overall Mangazulu is just... to me personally, I think this guy's going to be phenomenal because he's played 7 tests and look how he's playing. He plays like a natural, like he's been playing forever. So imagine when this guy comes with experience, what he's going to be like. But guys, if you enjoyed this video, I mean, I'm speaking a little bit softly because everyone's sleeping still at 6 in the morning here in New Zealand. But if you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button, please, and support my channel. I'll keep them rolling. They'll keep coming. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye. Cheers.